I'm reading this book right now called The Gap and the Gain. And it's a business book. It's not a spiritual book, but it talks about how two different ways that most people view the world or what's going on around them. And one of them is the gap. And what you're always doing is you're always comparing yourself to where you're at now to where you want to be, the ideal place. And how basically that always gets pushed, what your ideal would look like. And so you're never actually happy. You never have joy because the mark keeps getting pushed. And that's the gap.
Wow.
And that's what a lot of he talks about how like a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress happens because of that. You're always looking at where you are compared to where you wish you were. And there's not a lot of joy or happiness in there. But then the gain is looking at where you were and where you're at right now and seeing that growth and that transformation.
That's good.
And how that brings in joy and confidence and like the ability to move forward. And now I'm relating like the joy and the happiness that you have to what you're talking about right now is you have looked back or are looking back and going, I was here and I thought I was great, but there was so much room for me to grow and now I'm here. And you're just going to keep doing that. And so that was what like just the book I was reading.
I think there's a cool thing. I think things that are inherently true about God or the world, like truth is not confined to just the Bible. Like I think that you can look at it and you find a book that's about business, but something hits you and like that's truth. You can probably tie it back and say that's intrinsically true about the Lord and that you can find like in the Bible.
Yeah.
There's a songwriter, Peter Townsend, who has a quote that's, I think I'm going to bastardize this. Every song I ever wrote was about Jesus. I didn't know to call him by name.
Wow.
And I mean, who knows where he's at theologically, but ultimately I think that that's kind of like everything that is like true and good ultimately flows from the source, the one source that is divine truth and good.
Yeah. If I can speak to that joy that you guys have both mentioned, and I think it's so relatable to people. And what's wild is I just had a conversation with a young 20-something who, is just struggling through depression and just thoughts of worth, purpose, and, lifelong things. And, but she exudes joy. So when people look at her, when they encounter her, there's this joy. And yet she and I are having this conversation where she's saying, I don't know that I can experience the joy. I haven't experienced it yet and I'm longing for it. And I'm saying to her, everything about you is, and if deep down you're not feeling it, other people are seeing it and receiving that from you. And what's wild is now on the other side of the, kind of mirror or wall, this is what you guys are saying. And I would say, really not until the last maybe a little bit less, year and a half, 2 years, do I feel like I have really understood and been able to walk in what we would call, the joy of the Lord. I think there are these moments when we can get caught up in environment. We can get caught up in, so church, I don't know how many people watching that are church people, right? I'm a church girl. You get caught up in a moment because everyone else is caught up in the moment and all that's coming is praise and joy, right? To our God. But then we can look at what you're talking about and we can see like, well, these are the promises of God on my life and I haven't seen them yet. And there's not a lot of joy in that, right? When we think about it naturally, there's not a lot of joy in that. I've worked hard. I don't see the fruit of my labor. There's not a lot of joy in that. Just being honest, with, personal relationships and, God, I know you've spoken this over my life, but no one's seeing it. It's not recognized. There's not really a lot of place for joy in that. And yet there is, but when we're thinking how the world thinks and trying to achieve how the world achieves and placing ourselves within that world standard, there's not a lot of joy. And until and I'd read this, I grew up in a very like conservative Lutheran church, and I love that I did. I love that I did. But I walked away. I walked away from the rules. I walked away from the religion. I walked away because I was like, I don't want any of this. These people are crazy. And I'm very thankful that I did, because I remember a verse that was always said, and it was, return unto me the joy of my salvation. David wrote that in a psalm, return unto me the joy of my salvation. Heard it over and over and over. And I was like, yeah, this is, I know it. I know it. I would say maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, the Lord really started speaking to me about the joy of my salvation. And that is the joy. And we have seasons of joy, which I think that is what people have seen. Seasons of joy where we have been through something, and then we're thankful and we're thanking him that he's brought us through, and we're like, wow, you're so good.
Yeah.
I think where I'm walking now is the joy of my salvation. It's a different walking. And so yes, there's great joy, even like going through something and coming on the other side. But now there's a different joy within me that's just like, again, wow, you chose to reveal yourself to me. You chose to die for me, but you chose to reveal that to me. You chose to speak your truth to me. You've chosen to be pleased with me. You've chosen to allow your glory to reside within me, your very presence to be within me. You've chosen that I, in my unworthiness, am also a worthy vessel because of the finished work of Jesus. Wow, you have chosen to let your spirit not only rest on me, but to abide within me, so that everything that I see and everything that I do ought to bring you glory. Wow.
Yeah.
Like, wow. And it's like this humbling joy that he's just pleased to do that. Like,
yeah.
it's crazy. It's
That
I don't know if that even answers the other question. Like, where are you now? Yeah.
that just welled up like such a warm feeling inside, because there was something that through David saying that, he's like saying, return to me the joy of my salvation. What he's doing is making that joy present tense.
Yeah.
And so even like as you're just rattling off, like he chose this for you. And then even from a perspective, if I can say, he's choosing this he's choosing, making that so present to reveal more of himself to me. He's choosing to stay in relationship with me. That sense of, is not something that, because I think if anybody that's been a believer for a longer stint of time too, it's like we can look back, well, it's like to the time you raised your hand or whatever your moment looked like when you accepted Christ or did something, but like sometimes that can feel like there's a distance from that experience. And we just kind of go into maybe this kind of like playing the game, attending services, doing whatever, but like we're still like kind of eating the manna from that past experience.
Yeah.
Instead of getting the new manna, the fresh, that he's choosing that's new for you every day.
That's a word.
And there is a difference in how you can operate with joy when you're receiving something fresh and something new every day. That was welling up. That was,
yeah.